All right. So today we're going to talk about Delta Math's effect on motivation and achievement, um, and see kind of how that played out. So first of all, here's just kind of a general overview. We'll talk about some of the background, some of the research questions, the methodology. Talk about how we analyze data and the findings that we found, and then we'll discuss the conclusion and recommendations that we will make for other teachers. So, background. So, basically, like many of you are aware, over the last 2 years, education has changed a lot as we've dealt with COVID 19. At the beginning of it, schools went fully remote until things were a bit more under control. Then, a lot of schools went to hybrid or remote models of instruction. And along with that, a lot changed. Teachers kind of reinvented things and reassessed how they looked at stuff. But now, right now that we're back in school, there are a lot of gaps in knowledge that students have. Throughout many departments, it seems that students just seem, totally uninterested, unmotivated. They don't really seem to care as much. They're on their phones a lot more frequently, and they just seem to lack the, educational stamina that we saw pre-pandemic. So for students to to sit and work on a problem over a large amount of time, right? That's something that students are struggling to do now. So we wanted to see, how can we use Delta Math to help that. And so Delta Math is a program where teachers can make customized assignments and allow students to access sample solutions and instructional videos while kind of working through their problems. Um, and so the two main things that we wanted to see were how can Delta Math not only improve academic performance, but also how can they improve student motivation and engagement? Because uh, part of what we noticed in classes where students were not participating as much as they normally do. And the hypothesis was, well, maybe that was tied in part to students not feeling totally comfortable with the material. Maybe they weren't sure, so they didn't want to say the wrong answer. And in talking to some students before, the research project started, that did seem to kind of be the case. Maybe not for all of them, but for some of them. So we thought maybe Delta Math could help on both fronts. So the research of this study was to implement the academic intervention of Delta Math and to observe the results that were happening. And so, because of that, right, it made sense. We wanted to use an action research style of approach, which used qualitative and quantitative data. It included, doing research on my own class. It just kind of, action research made the most sense. So this was done in an Algebra 2 class that consisted of ninth and 10th graders. And many of them have not experienced a traditional high school class. The last 2 years have been a mix of hybrid and remote learning. Um, and the school was in a wealthy suburban town. The high school had 704 students enrolled and has a long-standing history of, being a high-performing school. So just kind of some background on that. So data collection, there was a variety of things. We used student interviews, Google Forms, observational field notes, talked to the previous teachers as well. And then we also collected things like exit tickets. We observed student work, and we counted how many different students answered questions before and after the intervention. So here's just a little quick video, kind of overlaying, kind of what Delta Math is.
Delta Math is a website that allows teachers to assign content to their students from middle school through AP Calculus. Teachers can easily create assignments by adding any of almost 1,200 different problem types, each of which has countless randomly generated problems that give kids immediate feedback and show step-by-step directions on how to solve them. Teachers can click on any problem and see unlimited examples of the types of problems their students will be solving. There is a search bar where teachers can search for keywords or for Common Core standards. They can also list all problem types by Common Core standards. If a student is assigned the distributive property, they would see this question page. If they got the answer wrong, they will see the full solution, for which this one includes an animation. For combining like terms, there is a guided version which is interactive and gives kids hints along the way. For example, if they tried to drag negative 2x squared onto negative 6y squared, they'd be giving a hint that those are not like terms and they must have the same variable. If they do connect the y squareds together, they're asked to combine that result. If they get it wrong, they're given feedback that they do not add up to 9y squared. Only when they get it right does it give them a new row in which they can continue combining like terms until there are as few as possible. If you want a more traditional approach, you can just assign regular combined like terms in which the kid just has to type the answer. And if the answer is incorrect, then they're able to see the full solution and learn from their mistake. Many modules have great visual tools to help students understand the conceptual reason for the steps they are taking.
So, just a little bit about what Delta Math is and what it does, both from the teacher and the student side. Uh,
Delta
so,
Math.
Analyzing the data that we found. So, we did this study on the Algebra 2 class, like we said, and they were studying logarithms. And so, we looked at their data um, for terms that referenced motivation. Uh, Coding was used when students were rating their views of mathematics as well as how much they enjoyed Delta Math. So, they rated it on a scale of 1 to 5, um, in which each one represented a different comfortability with that. We also observed, or one of the observations that we noticed was one student that was observed was using Delta Math diligently, but didn't really result in that student raising their hand anymore. Now, that was one student, but it was kind of, there were many students where that happened. It wasn't just one. And so, that was kind of interesting because, okay, well, we thought, well, maybe they have more comfortability with it. They've seen more examples. They maybe watched a video that kind of taught them how to do it, um, but it didn't really translate into more participation. And in talking to one student, what she said was that she enjoyed using Delta Math, but it felt very similar to class. She said, um, the way that the examples were given, um, the way that it kind of broke it down. She said it was really similar to how class was. Um, but one thing that she didn't like was that it wasn't the teacher that was providing feedback. So she was kind of used to the way certain things were explained and certain things were done and the vocabulary there. And so Delta Math was a little different. And so she kind of, not a struggle, but she felt like that was something that she had to overcome. So overall, unfortunately, Delta Math did not have much of an impact on performance when it came to logarithms. It didn't really seem to lead to an increase in student participation. So it doesn't seem to support the idea that it would do those things. Um, a couple of just things, potentially why that was the case. It might be that just Delta Math was too similar to how the current class protocols were, and so the amount of learning didn't really increase. Maybe it was just kind of the baseline level of learning, um, and so that also leads us to believe that, okay, well, maybe this lack of motivation and participation and things like that are not due to a lack of understanding the concepts. Perhaps it's another variable. So just other things to think about that maybe other people can do research on. So although it didn't improve student scores, it didn't lower them. So something to consider there is, okay, well, maybe Delta Math has other uses. Maybe when a teacher is out for a sick day, or has to take a leave of absence, maybe Delta Math is a tool that they can use to still provide some sound instruction for their students. Um, and so maybe there's other variables and ways to go about using that. So I don't think Delta Math is useless based on this data, just maybe has to be used differently. Um, It also taught us that students are open to trying new things and new learning modalities. Um, and this is good because, if research comes out that supports, a different math program, students won't be resistant to trying that, right? They'll welcome it with kind of some more open mind, and, they'll take advantage of it if possible. So here, just kind of a brief overview. We'll talk about lessons, limitations, and future recommendations that we'll kind of get into. Um, so the first is that Delta Math was easy to use, and they did enjoy the resources it provided. However, did not coincide with an increase in performance and achievement or motivation of their learning. The limitations of the study was that we were not able to study a variety of different topics, and see how maybe different units in the Algebra 2 curriculum could be affected using Delta Math. And, also we didn't get a chance to try it in an Algebra 1 class or a geometry class. Maybe at the higher level of math, maybe in a pre-calculus class where students have a bit more uh, math underneath their belt, maybe it works better. Maybe it works worse. You never know. So just different things to think about, and definitely areas to consider. And then finally, teachers could certainly use Delta Math when they're absent, like we were talking about, because it didn't lower students' achievement. And so also, things to consider is the modality, not the modality, but the setting in which it could be used. So whether it's used for remote instruction, where students are completely remote, maybe it works differently there. Maybe if it's hybrid, it works differently there. This was happened to be an in-person synchronous class, and so maybe that was the least effective. But just other things to consider. That's it for today. I appreciate everyone watching and listening, and hopefully we're able to get something out of that.